It's a verdict Bosnia has been waiting for a long time, and on the 24th of March, it will come. Is Radovan Karadzic, the Bosnian Serb wartime leader, guilty or not? Guilty of war crimes and, more importantly, guilty of genocide. Guilty of the siege of Sarajevo, which lasted from 1992 to 95, where he allegedly participated in a campaign of sniping and shelling of civilians aimed to spread terror amongst them. A campaign that claimed over 10,000 victims. Is he guilty of the detention of thousands of Bosnian Muslims and Croats in conditions calculated to bring about their physical destruction? And the ethnic cleansing and killing of hundreds in the northwest town of Biljani? But the most awaited verdict is Srebrenica. Is Karadzic guilty of planning the genocide of almost 8,000 Muslim men and boys in July of 1995? The worst atrocity not only of the Bosnian War, but the worst in Europe since World War II. In all, Karadzic has been tried for 11 counts of war crimes, including 2 counts of genocide. And while many Bosnians hope Karadzic is sentenced to life behind bars, there are also many who see him as a hero. Hasan Nuhanovic survived Srebrenica. He was an interpreter for the UN forces and was thus allowed to stay on the compound, but his parents and brother were not. 3 years ago, he won a court case against the Netherlands. He argued the Dutch peacekeeping forces in Srebrenica had failed to save those they'd promised to protect.
My mother is dead, my father is dead, and my brother is dead. I lived in Srebrenica during the war, so I not only survived the massacre in July '95, I survived the suffering that lasted for 3.5 years during the war. We were totally besieged and starved, bombed, you know. So the most difficult period of my life is probably behind me. So what happens with Karadzic verdict, I don't know if it will change my life, you know, personally, but it might affect the overall situation in this region, because I don't think this place is, you know, politically stable. We have statements every day coming from some of the Serb politicians, or their leading politicians, saying that this country should not exist. And this is exactly what Radovan Karadzic tried to do.
In November of 1995, the Dayton Peace Accord ended the war, a conflict which had killed 100,000 people and had displaced 2 million. But the peace accord also divided Bosnia into 2 separate entities along ethnic lines, the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Republic of Srpska. Mirsa Duratovic sought refuge in Germany in 1993. He came back in 2001 to his hometown of Biljani in the northwest of the Republic of Srpska. He's one of the few Bosnian Muslims here to have returned.
As you can see, most of these houses are empty. This house, they live in Austria. They are in Germany. And this one, Spain.
This is the cemetery where his father, brother, and other members of his family are buried. They were part of the more than 140 victims killed in what was called the Biljani massacre in July of '92. Duratovic's father was killed immediately. Duratovic survived because he was sent to a concentration camp. His 15-year-old brother would not be so lucky.
My brother and I and 2 others were taken to the village centre. We were then separated. They let my brother and cousin go home, and I got onto a bus that went to Karadzic camp. But it was so full they took us to Omarska, then Manjaka, and then Ternopilje. Meanwhile, my brother and cousin, on their way back, were stopped by Serb police and killed right there. All this happened in one day.
Duratovic came back to Bosnia to find his father's and brother's remains. It took 13 years. He says a guilty verdict for Karadzic will bring some satisfaction, but not justice.
The most painful thing for us is Karadzic's legacy, which continues. It's the Republika Srpska, which was founded on genocide, and the bones of my brother, my father, my grandmother, and 47 other members of my family. Justice for the victims will be the sentencing of Karadzic and Mladic, but also the dissolution of the Republika Srpska, founded on genocide. That would be the real justice for the victims.
Milomir Kovacevic is a Bosnian Serb who was in Sarajevo throughout the siege. He now lives in France. Today, this photographer is back in Sarajevo for an exhibition on photographs he took of children during the siege. He says the war was complicated, that Yugoslavia broke apart after nationalist rhetoric backed by guns took over. Why don't you want to talk about Karadzic?
I don't like to talk about it because we've already lost so many things because of the war. We often say that Karadzic is guilty. Is he really guilty? Because one couldn't do all that alone. There were so many armies. Why didn't the UN, who were here, why didn't they do anything? There are so many things which are complicated. I don't like to talk about it because there was so much manipulation around this. We were more or less abandoned by the world. And now the world is trying to hide behind Karadzic.
For Milovan Bjelica, it's important to understand that not all the victims of the war were Muslim. Here he shows us the cemetery where more than 1,000 Bosnian Serbs are buried, Serbs who were killed in the siege of Sarajevo. Bjelica was a member of the wartime Bosnian Serb leadership in Pale. It was Karadzic's stronghold during the war.
Radovan Karadzic never made any decisions by himself. He would organize meetings with those close to him, the vice president, the president of the parliament, the prime minister, the generals, and have long discussions with them. Radovan Karadzic was a true democrat. Even during the war, there were many who criticized him for not wanting to declare war.
There's little doubt that regardless of the verdict on Karadzic, not everyone will be happy. But for those whose lives were changed forever by the war, the hope is that the verdict will help close one of the country's darkest chapters in history.
What I hope for is that at least one part of the Serbian, society will accept the verdict as justice, as the truth. I don't know what's more important, justice or truth. Both should be, a part of this verdict. It's not just about the punishment, how many years the person will spend behind the bars. It's probably more about what's written there. And what's written there is, that is the only consensus that we can have about what happened in the wartime.